I'm going to take us across the world again now to Brazil. If we go back to the rights tracker, Anne-Marie, and we go to Brazil's front page. Brazil is in our survey, so we have a full set of data, both economic and social rights and civil and political rights. And the first thing I just want to notice, our headline was about Bolsonaro, who has been in power for a year or more, a year and a half now. But if we stay at the top, Anne-Marie, our quality of life income says that it's 2017. So that's before Bolsonaro was in power. Susan, can you just tell us why our data comes from then and isn't more recent?
Sure. The data that we use to construct our scores, actually the underlying indicator data comes from your publicly accessible international data sources. And that data initially comes from the governments themselves. Some of that data is based on surveys such as the Demographic and Health Survey. Other is based on administrative data. It takes the countries themselves, if they put the survey in field for a given year, it takes them a while to conduct the survey and process the survey. Then it also takes a while, once they have sent that information into the international organizations concerned, it takes those organizations a while to harmonize that data. And basically, by the time we have data on a particular indicator for the bulk of the world, we're at least 2 years behind date. And then it takes us a little while to process it and compute our scores as well. So that's the reason.
So we're measuring here, these scores are for how well the government in Brazil was doing in 2017. And right. That's the most recent we can get because of just the time lags of collecting data.
Right, but over time, we'll be able to see whether there has been an uptick given his focus on the economy. Some economists would argue that should happen, or whether, given his lack of focus on human rights, we actually find out that the economic and social rights deteriorate significantly.
Yeah, but so we have a 10-year time series on most of those rights, and over time it will become apparent, when things move around. Yeah, and if we go down to civil and political rights, Chad, these are more recent. It says 2019. We've just published them today. So they don't say 2020 because they are measuring the situation in 2019. Is that right?
That's right. We had the survey in the field from basically the beginning of February till the end of March, asking respondents about practices in 2019 and 2018. And similarly, last year, we had the survey in the field during about that same time period, asking respondents about 2018 and 2017.
So can you tell us what we're seeing here about Brazil? How are things going there?
Well, in general, Brazil is scoring pretty poorly on most of our civil and political rights indicators, absent the death penalty, which is banned in Brazil currently. The vast majority of the safety from the state scores fall in the bad to very bad range. The same for empowerment rights. All three of those fall in the bad to very bad range. And I think, you framed this earlier about, observing things since Bolsonaro took power last year. And I think, one of the things that's interesting to look at is if we can observe any change. And I would say that we have. So Anne-Marie, if you would mind going to safety from the state. One of the big changes we've observed over the last year appears to be in arbitrary arrest, which falls in the very bad range. But if we look at how our survey respondents have discussed it, we do see a decline from, particularly from 2017 to 2019. And pretty close to a significant decline between 2018 and 2019. So freedom from arbitrary arrest seems to be negatively trended right now. Things appear to be getting worse on that score at the moment. The same could be said for at least one of our empowerment rights as well. So Anne-Marie, if you could switch us over to that tab. So once again, we see that all of these are in the bad to very bad range, but opinion and expression lags pretty distantly behind the others. And indeed, since last year, we've seen what appears to be a change for the worse in the right to opinion and expression, where our respondents are really telling us that in 2019, that right was far less respected than it was in 2018. So you know, at the very least, it does appear that there have been some changes over the last year, and we'll have to monitor the situation to see if they continue or whether the tide can be stemmed.
Yeah, thanks, Chad.